Hello, hello, hello. TM24 here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. Now, today we've got an ongoing deck featuring our guy Orka. Now, if you're just finding the channel, welcome. I appreciate you for stopping by, taking a look. I hope you find this video, entertaining and informative. Hopefully, it gives you some deck ideas. And if you're coming back and watching some more, thank you. I appreciate you coming back here. My llama here, who's kind of sitting next to my headphones, appreciates you as well. But let's get into this deck that we've built right here. So, we've got an ongoing deck featuring our guy Orka. Now, the idea here is, as you can see with Electro and Sandman, we're trying to get Sandman down so that we can play, single cards and limit our opponent and what they're playing, and then hopefully drop Orka on turn 6, but that is not our only win condition. You'll see we've got Claw in this deck, we've got Mr. Fantastic, we've got, Onslaught, Spectrum, so there are tons of ways to win, and I promise you, you're going to want to wait until the last game. It's absolutely nuts, and definitely worth a sub if you're not already. But let's get into talking about the card choices and kind of their uses. So, first up, it's probably the new best one-drop in the game, and it's Nebula. She's just great. She puts a ton of pressure on your opponent to play on that lane, so that's huge. Then we've got two drops. We've got Armor and we've got Lizard. I love Armor. He's an ongoing. He can kind of protect things. Granted, we don't have a whole ton we're protecting, but protecting our Nebula is not a bad play. We've also got Lizard. Playing Lizard just on a separate lane splits the attention again. It either forces your opponent to commit to that lane, or all of a sudden you've got 5 power for 2 there, and that just feels great. So those are our 2 drops. Going into our 3 drops, we've got 3 of them. Now, Electro, he's pretty self-explanatory. You'd love to get him down on 3 as long as you've got Sandman in your hand, so you can get Sandman down and then just play your big cards and win the game. But we've got a couple other options there, and a couple of them are pretty good. Mr. Fantastic, he's great in the middle lane. He's a 3/6 buffing lanes that you're not even in. I think that there's huge value in that because there are a ton of locations in Snap that are super frustrating because you simply can't play on them. So being able to get, Mr. Fantastic down feels amazing. And then an inclusion I just kind of thought made a ton of sense, especially with Nebula and playing against other Nebulas, is the Punisher. And I haven't seen a ton of people playing him, but he really does make a ton of sense, right? They're going to be playing on your Nebula lane, so why not have Punisher there? Each card they play there, your Punisher is going to get buffed, although your Nebula isn't getting that power. So it's kind of like a little offset where you're not getting the power from Nebula, but Punisher's going up. Additionally, playing Punisher on a Nebula lane, a lane that your opponent has played Nebula, feels great as well. Typically, they're stacking that lane, and you can see right here, perfect example, their Nebula came down, so I'm just going to go ahead and slam my Punisher and know that they're probably going to fill that lane or be close to filling that lane, and having Punisher down is a great source of power, cheap source of power. So I think Punisher actually has a lot of value in this deck. Now, we don't have any 4 drops, and the reason is because ideally we're hitting Electro on 3 so that we can play a 5 drop on 4. If we miss, that's okay because we've got other 3 drops or 2 drops that we can play on turn 4 instead. So yes, no 4 drops, no real answers, but I think that's okay. I think it works with this deck, and you'll see it in some of these games that it doesn't, it doesn't hurt us too much. Now, our 5 drops, we've got 3 of them. We've got Devil Dino, we've got Sandman, who of course we're trying to hit on 4 if possible, and then we've got Claw. And I think Claw may be the best out of the 3. It really depends on how you're playing, because dropping Devil Dino for a huge source of power is great, especially if you get Electro down since you're only playing 1 card per turn. As you can see in this example, we played Claw here into their Daredevil. It makes it really, really tough for them to actually come back and do something here, because ideally there they would have Professor X or something like that, but Claw puts power in 2 lanes, 4 and 6, so it can make it really hard for them to kind of lock you out of a lane. You can see here that they're trying to do it, but that's okay because we've got Claw in our other lane, we've got Punisher there, we've got Mr. Fantastic and Armor, and now we've got Spectrum coming back over the top to buff everything up. So I think Claw is a great addition in this deck. And then our 6 drops, right? We've got Spectrum, which you're seeing here. She comes in handy. And just so you guys know, little spoiler here, that last game, Spectrum goes absolutely off, and it's a great win. But I think Spectrum is great in this deck. Additionally, we've got Onslaught in case we can, find a lane full of, Mr. Fantastic, Claw, Punisher. All of a sudden, dropping an Onslaught onto that lane feels really good. So I think there's a ton of value in Onslaught as well. And then, of course, Orka, in case we just need to drop him down, and he can win you a lane on his own. This game here, you can kind of see if we can get an early Sandman out where they've got nothing down, we can feel free. We can go ahead and snap, and we're probably going to win this game. The peak really did give us a little bit of an advantage here, but that just shows you Sandman slowing them down is awesome for us. So you'll see here, they put down a Lockjaw and a Wasp. They pull a Chavez, which is actually pretty good, but we've got Sandman. And because we've got Claw, we can reach locations like the Sanctum that otherwise we wouldn't be able to reach. So I think Claw brings a ton of value here. You can see we snap played them, and we know they're only playing 1 card per turn here, so we're just waiting to kind of see, what they're going to do. They come back over the top with the Dracula, which I think is probably a pretty subpar play in this instance, because we know their hand is full because they've only played 3 cards. And with them only being able to play 1 per turn, there's no guarantee Dracula is going to hit anything good here. Now, I've got a decision here. I could either play something big and worry about it getting Shang-Chi'd, or I could play something a little bit smaller. But seeing my hand, knowing what we've got, we feel that just dropping a Devil Dino down is going to make it really tough for them to win. They can't compete at all 3 lanes. We're winning all 3 going into turn 6. We even have Onslaught ready to go. Going to play him right on top of Claw, but we get a nice big victory there. Now, moving into this next game. So, we've got Nebula. We decide to keep her away from Stark Tower because we don't want them putting cards there, continuing to play cards there when, turn 5 comes around and they'll probably get that buff. So, we play Nebula into the far right lane, and that allows us to split Nebula and armor, meaning that we'll have power in Stark Tower as well. Our armor will get buffed because they're going to have to deal with our Nebula. So they end up coming right back, but we hit Electro this time, and we're quick to snap play him even though we don't have Sandman because of Elysium. That means that we're going to be able to get down, a 6 drop next turn, which is absolutely huge. So we don't feel bad at all about playing Electro. They do hit with the Star-Lord, which is a little bit frustrating, but hey, that's what these, Nebula control decks can do. So we get our Electro out, Sinister London comes down, and I'm like, okay, that could be a problem. Cards costing 1 less, we've got 5. We feel like we need to get as much power out there as possible, and we put our Devil Dino down, and we are lucky we did, because they came back through with the Professor X, locking us out of Elysium and Sinister London. But luckily, we already have the Devil Dino down, so we're going to win Sinister London. And now we're already ahead by 12-14 in Stark Tower. So we feel comfortable just slamming a Spectrum and letting it go to turn 6. Now, this game was super satisfying, and you'll see it because of his play here. And it's this Spider-Man. So normally, going into a turn 6, if you get locked out, there's nothing you can do. You're going to feel a little bit bad. You're going to feel like, maybe you don't have a shot to win this, but we are up 17. There's not a single card that has that amount of power. And now it's actually more than that, right? Now it's, what is it, 18? We're up 18 going into turn 6. The only card I could think of that would even give them a shot would be Enchantress, but I think we would still have more power. So I'm pretty sure we had won this game. And it was just a matter of them trying to figure out if there was a way that they could do it. Maybe an Enchantress. Jeff puts 9 power. That puts him at 14. But we still have more because we have Spectrum. We've got our buffed armor. And we have Devil Dino, who is not 3 power. He's 5 because of Spectrum as well. So we're actually at 15, even if Enchantress comes through. He realizes it, and he gets on out. So, again, another super satisfying game because we didn't even get the chance to play on turn 6, and they ended up retreating. So that was just a great feeling. Now this one, ooh, cloning bats came up, and we feel good about that because we can play our Nebula, we can get a second copy, and go ahead and slam her down, and this is just going to put a ton of pressure on our opponent to kind of answer her or, risk her just running away with the game on her own. They come through with the Jeff, which I think is a really, really nice play as well, but you can see here, we are ready to go. We have our Punisher. We know that's going to be what we want to do, and I think, like I said, I think the Nebula Punisher combo is actually a nice little combo there because of, the Punisher gaining power when they play cards on that location, even though our Nebula, doesn't get her +2. It just, he seems like a really, really good inclusion in, this type of deck. And he's ongoing, so he gets buffed by Spectrum as well. And you can see, we don't really have too many other plays. Superflow came up, so that's perfect for us. We're going to go ahead and drop Sandman and know that we've just got bigger, better cards ready to come through. So we get our Sandman down. They play a Green Goblin into the cloning bats. A little bit frustrating. We still have our, we still have one spot open, but they negate our Nebula. Our Punisher is staying the same for now, and Daredevil is such a frustrating card because he's seeing what we've got going on. So in this instance, I feel I've only got one really good play here, and it's going to end up being Claw. So getting Claw down on Wakanda puts us up to 8. So he can't lock us out of there. He can't lock us out of the Superflow either because we will be ahead with Claw. So that really only leaves him one option if he wants to Professor X, which is what he ends up doing. You'll see it here. He plays Professor X into the cloning bats. That's fine because now we are up 5 in Wakanda and 6 in Superflow, and we can just drop our Onslaught, going up 12 in Wakanda and 12 in Superflow, which 12 is a really good number. There are tons of 6-drops out there that could beat it. If he had his own Orca, he could win the game. If he's got a Destroyer, something like that, again, he would easily win the game. But you can see here, it makes it really tough. He's kind of thinking this through, trying to figure out what we've got going on. Additionally, we could have went with something like a Spectrum and put, it would have added 4 power to Wakanda, 5 to the Superflow. Not as good, but it would put, at least a card over there. You can see we had options. We could have went with an Orca into the Superflow as well, but I wanted to add power to both locations, and Onslaught was the best way to do that. Claw Onslaught is just another great little 2-card combo that can win you games for sure. And you see here, he throws Jeff over into the Superflow, which, again, didn't make a whole ton of sense to me. It would have won had we not played our Onslaught, but Onslaught came through and gave us that dub again. So, again, a really, really satisfying victory here. And I think this is the last one. I'm telling you, this game gets wild, and you'll see why here in a moment. They come through with a Nebula, and we're like, okay, that's fine. We're going to need to put something there to kind of keep her in check. And that's where either Lizard or Armor is going to come into play. We decided to go with Lizard. Armor might have been the better play, but we felt like it was worth it just going ahead and dropping Lizard down. Wakanda comes through. We kind of knew that. It's one of the hot locations. Now we've got a decision to make. We could go with an Electro, but we don't have any good real follow-up. And you can see here, we're quick to just snap that Punisher, keep that Nebula in check, while making sure any cards that they play there are going to be buffing our Punisher. I'm telling you, he's underrated card in this deck and this meta, given how many people are actually playing Nebula. So I think he's a great, great inclusion. Now they snapped here, and I'm like, okay, that makes me rethink what I want to do here. We can, of course, move cards on turn 6 to New York. So we're kind of thinking through what we want to do. I know that I want to play at least 3 energy here. I was thinking about Armor, but I decided to go with Mr. Fantastic instead. Now, he's going to put a ton of power out there. And what it does is it forces my opponent to think that we're probably keeping our Mr. Fantastic there because that's where he gets the most value, right? So if we keep our Mr. Fantastic in Bar Sinister, that's where he's going to provide the most value. We also pick up Sandman, which is a great inclusion here. Given his deck, the Nebula, Darkhawk, I'm pretty sure this is like the Black Bolt version as well. I think he ends up playing a Stature or something like that, but that just means that we should get our Sandman down. and prevent him from going crazy on turn 6. They play Mystique, which is a great play. Copying that Darkhawk, 4 Mystiques is absolutely wild. Look at that, 40 power and a Loot Cage along with it. So that tells me he probably had Hazmat. And now comes turn 6 where we decide to just absolutely pop off. I'm trying to decide, is it better to go Claw in Bar Sinister? How many Mr. Fantastics should I move over? Ultimately, I decide, you know what? All of them got to go. And Spectrum is going to come down. She's going to buff everything we have plus, +2 4 times. So everything's getting +8, and that is just absolutely nuts. So we drop Spectrum down. They end up playing, I think it was the Stature here. Let's see if we are right. But we do move our Mr. Fantastic over, which actually throws 8 power already into Bar Sinister before Spectrum comes through and just absolutely ramps everything up, making it super tough for him to win this game just because of the amount of power we're putting out there. Spectrum on Bar Sinister is just, it's huge. And yep, there's the Stature, but ultimately not going to be enough, and we get another win with this deck. Feels really, really good here. So, as I was saying, this is the deck list. I've had a ton of fun playing it. I don't think it's as optimized as I would like yet. At times, I felt like Sunspot would have been a great inclusion. Maybe instead of Armor. I don't know how much value Armor provided. I felt like maybe Sunspot would have been a better play, because sometimes we had a really heavy hand, and if Sunspot was out there, at least we would have been gaining power that way. But if we put Sunspot in there, we probably want to keep Armor. So overall, I think there's still some tinkering left to do with this deck. If you guys have any thoughts, please feel free to put them in the comments below. And if you didn't subscribe, hey, now's a great time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like it for me, as it really does help out. But until next time, remember, have some fun.